I can't believe I'm saying this, but today I'm going to be playing defense for Sony, and why it would be an incredibly stupid decision for them to greenlight a Destiny 3 despite the demand from fans. Before I go into my reasoning, and the reasoning Sony is probably using as well, I'd like to pose a question. What would be the incentive for Sony to let Bungie make a D3? If we backtrack to the very start, Sony acquired Bungie on the 15th of July 2022 for approximately $3.6 billion. They had previously only gotten a taste of the Bungie talent with the likes of Firewalk Studios, founded by former Activision executive Tony Hsu and former Bungie creative director Ryan Ellis. Sony went on to buy Firewalk, which of course led to the development of Concord, as Sony had seen the market surrounding live service shooters and how lucrative Fortnite had been. And as they doubled down on their stake in the market, they acquired Bungie and transformed Destiny 2 into the live service game that, well, for a lack of better phrasing, plagued our wallets for years to come. Concord came and went, and now Sony had to recoup its investments in the studios overall. While the number for Firewalk's acquisition remains undisclosed, Ethan Gatch reports that it was for $200 million, not including marketing, the sale of the IP rights, the studio acquisition, or the game's delayed launch. So, assuming this number is within the correct ballpark, Sony poured $3.8 billion into just 2 studios alone, with nothing to show for it. This is all without mentioning Pete Parsons' spending of over $2.3 million right after the acquisition on vintage cars. Only then to go on and cite financial issues as the reason for the layoffs of 220 employees. Let's take a look at the revenue made from each Destiny expansion post-acquisition. Surely Sony made some money back with those releases, right? Witch Queen was the last release before the acquisition, it being only a few months prior. So we'll be looking at the revenue for Lightfall, The Final Shape, Edge of Fate, and Renegades, along with all the stuff in between. Before I give these numbers, remember that they aren't official but rather estimates, so take this next part with a grain of salt. Lightfall was estimated by Bungie to make a net revenue of $8,394,492, while actually making $16,788,983 in gross revenue since its initial release, with around $1,059,126.84 worth of refunds on Steam alone. This would leave Bungie having made around $15.7 million. Now, looking at Final Shape, the devs have made an estimate of $599,241.04, which ended up being a gross revenue of $2,031,325.56 since the expansion's initial release, followed by roughly $243,759.07 worth of refunds from Steam sales. Bungie's final expansion in the Light and Dark saga would make around $1.78 million, far lower than Lightfall. Again, these are all rough estimates with Steam's numbers alone. I haven't been able to find any solid evidence for the console side of sales, so don't take these at face value. I'm just trying to paint as close of a picture as I can for what happened. If we jump further to when Beyond Light and Witch Queen dropped and compare those numbers, we can start to get an even clearer image. Beyond Light made a rough net revenue of $4,303,460, while Witch Queen made $3,495,766. So, despite Lightfall outdoing both Beyond Light and Witch Queen combined by around double the amount, Sony still considered it a commercial failure, being cited saying that it fell short of revenue expectations. This was considered a 45% revenue loss, by the way, yet Witch Queen wasn't considered that. So where's the logic? Well, we're not too sure, to be completely honest. If I had to guess, it's because of the rising cost of upkeep. Despite it seemingly doing well, Bungie would have still been in the red financially since the acquisition. Then came Edge of Fate and Renegades, for which, as of now, we have even less financial information for. Edge of Fate was estimated to have made around $2.3 million during its launch window. Renegades, we have nothing. No, seriously, I cannot find a breadcrumb anywhere relating to a single solid number. All we have for it is that it performed worse than Edge of Fate, so do with that as you will. What we do know for certain is that Sony recorded a substantial write-down, impairment loss, of approximately $765 million tied to Bungie and its live service portfolio. Mind you, this was shortly after the launch of Marathon, the alleged savior for both Bungie and Sony's collective pockets. Renegades wasn't even hitting good player count numbers, with Steam alone having around 71,000 concurrent players, which is a notable drop from prior expansions. I think Lightfall has had the highest concurrent players to date, with 316,750 concurrent players on Steam alone. In 2025, Sony reported steep financial setbacks related to Bungie's live service bets, taking impairments amounting to 120.1 billion yen, as Destiny continued to fail to hit any of its financial goals. That's roughly $766 million. To quote CFO Lin Tao on Bungie's further tomfuckery, when you look at the factors causing the change from our February forecast for operating income, you can see that we recorded approximately 190 billion JPY in items not included in our previous forecasts, including impairment losses on assets at Bungie. End quote. This was regarding Sony's change to its February 2026 forecast to exclude Bungie's Q4 impairments. Weirdly enough, Sony wasn't entirely disappointed by Marathon's launch, with it making around $200 million and selling 1.2 million copies in its first month. Then came the recent news of Destiny's future, followed by the confirmed layoffs at Bungie. Paul Tassi's scoop confirmed that there began to be discussions and scenarios planned after Edge of Fate in terms of where Destiny 2 could or should go from there, because that expansion underperformed expectations, which then the conversations only got worse as Renegades underperformed even more poorly. The decision to ultimately kill the game was not made after Edge of Fate, but had actually been made earlier that year, which explains why stuff was still actively being worked on for Shattered Cycle and The Alchemist. Sony had toyed with multiple ideas, including a relaunch or even a sequel, but everything was deemed too expensive. Before anyone says it, no, Marathon's success or failure was not the tipping point of this. It was merely a factor. So, with all of that established and the money burning in the corner, why should Sony make a Destiny 3? They did just lay off 292 employees, essentially leaving a skeleton crew to maintain Destiny, while the others were shipped off to Marathon. So, to even start developing a Destiny 3, Sony would have to either rehire those they just fired, or build a completely new team from the ground up. Or they could always go the way of Halo Studios, where they just relabel the old studio and pretend everything is brand new in a vain attempt to make us forget the constant fuck-ups from before. On top of hiring a new team, they'd have to devote even more resources as the game grows larger once again. Server maintenance is a factor too, not only for D2, but also for D1, since those servers are still up. Employees need to be paid, and given that most were located in Washington, that'd be expensive as hell just on its own. Have you seen the rent prices there? Christ, it's a nightmare. So there's all that, plus paying or hiring voice actors, then hiring even more for the translations of the game for the wider non-English speaking market. It all adds up, and right now Sony doesn't have the money to do that, because they well and truly got swindled in 2022 and haven't been able to make a penny back from that since. People are even out there saying they should remake D1. Why? That's only a further waste of resources that won't yield a net positive for their income. If Destiny 3 were to be made now, regardless of the plot threads, would people actually play it? We've seen nothing but a steady decline in players since the end of the Light and Dark saga, as that was the natural jumping off point for most. Even now, with the game's final content update, people only came back because it was the final update. They weren't planning on returning anytime soon, if at all, had this all not played out the way it did. It does worry me that nobody wanting a D3 has recognized the age-old Bungie pattern when it comes to Destiny content. There's a petition going around, but if we even got a D3, what is there to guarantee it'd be any good? Bungie would need a clean sweep for that to even be considered worth the investment, and given their track record, that isn't a chance Sony is willing to take, and I agree with them. I know the Pete Parson-shaped car in the room played a large part in the mismanagement of Bungie, I won't deny that, but I also won't ignore some of the poor decision-making on the part of the devs. Pete wasn't hovering over their shoulders telling them to nerf certain weapons or to design encounters a certain way, or how to write their story. That came down to the devs and the writing team, and they had their misses, some in massive ways. Bungie, to me, is the perfect melting pot for all the wrong choices your company can make at every level. But that doesn't mean people should be mindlessly fired. There will always be bad apples, no matter where you look. But it's the average Joe who takes the brunt of the abuse of power from the upper management. If any devs from Bungie have stumbled upon this video and made it this far in, I'm so sorry. You deserve so much better in a career that outshines those who wronged you. You're insanely talented. I just hope someone else out there sees that and lets you thrive in a healthier environment. Bungie has had its histories of controversies, from art theft to lawsuits to accusations of a toxic work environment. You name it, they've probably been accused of it. It truly is a wonder why Sony even touched them with a 10-foot pole in the first place. And now, after the dust settles, Bungie will be remembered in infamy. a far cry from their golden era. Should Sony let Bungie make Destiny 3? No. No, they shouldn't. Not now, and maybe not ever. I hope this video has conveyed my thoughts well enough to get my point across. I can see Sony's logic, assuming that this is their line of thinking, and I agree with it. Right now, it would be financial suicide to dump even more money into this franchise or any incubation projects. Even Destiny Rising underperformed, so any chances of other spin-offs are completely off the table. That and all the internal pitches getting shot down, the 2 incubation projects that went nowhere so they ultimately sapped resources for no reason, it really is looking grim out here. Maybe Marathon will be the saving grace Sony needs in due time, given that pretty much the entire Destiny development team got transferred to work on that instead of Destiny. Oh. Well, if somehow, some way a Destiny 3 were to be greenlit, what would make you play? What changes would you want to see? Hell, where would you want to see the story go? I know what I'd like, but I'm curious to hear from all of you. That's all I've got for now. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked what you saw here today, feel free to leave a like, or if you're feeling extra devious, hit the subscribe button. We've recently hit 2,000 subscribers, and for that, I cannot thank you all enough. If you ever want some behind-the-scenes previews, project status updates, early access to videos, or just a cool Discord server to hang out in and yap about nerd stuff, we've got some fancy schmancy channel memberships that'll hopefully fit the bill. I've been Fawn Umbrella 612, and I hope you have an amazing day. Stay frosty.